Let's get the taps song going for MLS at Club World Cup. MLS is done at the Club World Cup after Inter Miami bows out. They lose handily 4-0 to the European champions, Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, I mean, as expected, all 4 goals in the first half. Probably could have been 5 or 6 or maybe even 7. You wonder if maybe PSG just we'll just throttle down a bit, save Lionel Messi the embarrassment of a bigger scoreline. They didn't have to exert themselves. Inter Miami was the worst team for PSG to play if you want MLS to do well, because they just don't play defense. They don't know how to be structured. They don't have stability through that midfield. They are wild and loose and open, and sometimes that works in Major League Soccer, and sometimes it works against lesser European teams. Shout out to that team for beating Porto. That still is on their resume. That's still something they can point to. But nobody went into a game between the reigning European champions and Inter Miami thinking, you know what? The Herons got this. There was actually one person in our comments, I think, who was like, if I was rich, I'd put $1,000 on Inter Miami. And I was like, I don't know, brother. That doesn't seem like a lot.
That's the definition of expendable income.
That does not seem like a good bet to me. And it turned out not to be. I don't think we need to do a lot of hand wringing over this. There are some things coming out of the general performance of MLS teams. LAFC was pretty poor. The Esperance performance was especially disappointing. Seattle had the most difficult group in the tournament and played relatively well considering their competition, right? Held their own at times, weren't played off the park. No. Again, the gap in quality exists. Rob, if Seattle was supposed to beat teams like Atletico Madrid and PSG, they would have players making 6, 7, 8 figures across their team. And that's not that's not how it works in MLS. So nothing should be a surprise. But I do think that in general, we can't have that conversation. We should be having that conversation. And whether MLS can say, we at least didn't get blown out across the tournament. If you are an advocate of MLS pushing the envelope and being bigger with their spending and their ambition, use this. I'm going to use it. I'm going to say, I don't really care how they did. If you want to be competitive with the world's best leagues, Don Garber talking about MLS being one of the best leagues in the world, probably by now. I think we're past that date that he promised.
I think that was
Johnny Infantino trying to sell us on MLS being a top 5 league in the world because he's here. Spend the money.
I'm here.
Open up the checkbook. Let these owners who are ambitious push the league forward.
Yeah, this tournament, if anything else, was a great visual representation of where Major League Soccer is in kind of like the world pantheon to a degree. Like the infrastructure and the cores of teams and whatnot are developed enough to be competent and hang to a degree. But that next level of non-restricted pocketbooks seems to be the restriction now. It's like some of the best players for these Major League Soccer teams were near or at the level, but there wasn't enough of them to overcome them. And you think that the teams that, PSG obviously throttled down. This game could have been 7-8 or whatever, but that's the best team possibly in the world. So
it is the best team in the world.
Yeah, best team in the world. So there's yeah. Well, you never want to speak in absolutes, right? But yeah, just great visual representation of the limitations that Major League Soccer clubs have. Yes. And a thought came through my mind that what would be bigger in the next year or two for American soccer landscape issues. Like obviously we got very excited about the possibility of promotion, relegation, and a competing Division I league. Would the removal of spending be as earth-shaking as those announcements?
Would taking the training wheels off MLS be as earth-shaking as the potential of ProRail and in USL? And then, yes, absolutely it would be. It'd be more transformative. Now, Major League Soccer has always been conservative because, as originally conceived, it was we have to protect against the league folding because every single time we've launched a professional men's soccer league, it has folded for one reason or another. And of course, if you know your history, you know that MLS nearly did fold after 2001, closed down 2 teams, Don Garber had to convince the owners to hang on, and they did, and now we're here. And I do think it's a sliding scale of expectations and demands, and we're at a point now because MLS is established, and because there are lots more soccer fans who are sort of conscious to what's going on, because they're the big dogs on the block. It's like you have to do this because I demanded it as a soccer fan in America, right? Like you owe us something as soccer fans to push us forward as a country, which is, there's something there psychologically that I think is interesting. But if it's true and if that's your mentality, well, Major League Soccer is they're the how do I say this? While USL is important, while the clubs we've been talking about with say Michael Hitchcock are important, the game is most driven by the highest level, by the most visible version of American soccer domestically, and that's Major League Soccer. So if suddenly they said, you know what, no more rules on spending, do what you want, just don't spend yourself into debt or don't spend yourself into insolvency, that would be massive. Massive. It doesn't mean everybody would start spending 50, 60, 80 million dollars on their payroll. I'm not saying that would happen overnight, but there would definitely be owners who would say, "Oh, I don't have any restrictions. I'm signing 8 7-figure players, and we're going to go dominate this league and hopefully the CONCACAF Champions Cup as well."
We shall see what happens first, top down or bottom up, with these changes or possible changes in the American soccer landscape.